Previously on Unpacked.
I don't remember a time we were not part of the mission church. In movies, they would censor the part that speaks to sex. She then pronounced that I will be expelled. If their parents take them in, they will no longer be accepted as church members. I went home to the village and not to my family.
Celimpilo Malinga shares the experience of being sent to a mission school that belonged to the church that her family was a part of. This is part 2 of her story. Let's unpack. Just in terms of the church, my understanding was, when you were explaining about the differences between how the white children and the black children were treated, was there some sort of virginity testing that would happen at the school?
Thank you for reminding me. Yes. So during school holidays, when we went home, when we return, the first thing that has to be done is we will be tested to check if the eye is still there. But the white children would not be tested. It was only the black girls. And when that was raised as an issue, the response was that the black parents requested that this be done on the children, on the black children. So it's a cultural thing, which was very convenient because there was nothing else that was cultural that we did as black girls. Now, talk about disorientation. When I'm at home, I don't relate to anything that is done on the cultural front. But when I'm with white people as well, I don't know what white people believe in or what is white people's culture in any sense. So talk about a dilemma in terms of who you are as a black person growing up in that space.
I'm just stuck on the virginity testing in general, and how was it done and who did it?
Okay, so there were 3 women who did it. They didn't change. It was just 3 of them. I think they were specialists in knowing if the eye is still there or if it is moved or if it is gone. Because, okay, let me not even get into that. Anyway, so how it would be done, we would queue up at the waiting room yet again. We would queue up and then we would walk in. Okay, I have to tell you this. It was such a painful thing because boys would walk past and they would laugh at us. They know what is about to happen. Just that was so much ridicule and humiliation. Because it was, if you ask me today about the cultural virginity testing, I have a different view altogether because I've given myself time to actually find out what the proper virginity testing is, how it is done and what it means. At this point in my life, I don't even know that there's a difference between going to the loo and doing number 1 and having sex. I don't even know my anatomy.
Because you were shielded from that information.
Yes. And then somebody goes in there and they do whatever they're doing. I don't even know what you're touching.
What do they do? So that, the viewers have an understanding. If somebody says, because you're also saying that in hindsight, you don't see it the same as the cultural way of it being done. What was it that they were doing?
So you would walk in, there's a bowl of water, they would wash their hands they don't wash their hands before. So you walk in, there's a bowl of water, they ask you to lie down, there's a pillow that you prop your bum on, and then you put your legs up. The 3 of them are looking inside. You're sitting there and you're shivering. You don't know what they're going to find. No one knew what they were looking for. No one knew where they were looking because we didn't know what we looked like down there. And so someone would hold the lips, and then they would look, and then they would speak, and then they would close you up, and then they would ask you to put on the panty, and then they would wash their hands in that bowl of water, and then they will let you go.
So how do you know if you've passed or failed whatever the test is that they were performing on you?
That was the thing. You did not know.
Unless, of course, you got expelled.
No. They would ask you a set of questions, and then they'd let you go. Later on, then you are called. That the testing told the mamas that you had been tampered with. Who did you sleep with? What did you do during holidays? And then, who are your friends? Where were you with your friends? Your family is going to be consulted. It's going to be to try and prove that this really did happen. And then some people would eventually be expelled. Some people would not be expelled. But there was no explanation as to why this one was expelled and why this one was not expelled.
So obviously at the time, everybody in the school would know that something is happening if you were found, to have been naughty in inverted commas.
Yeah, they would, because you'd be called into one meeting and another. So there's a little bit of commotion. And sometimes you're not going to school because you're attending to the case. And you're not telling anybody really what is actually going on. And then before you know it, the person has disappeared or has left, or we are called to a meeting where the person will then be dismissed. We will be told that this person did this during school holidays, they became naughty, and they are being dismissed.
Was there any kind of sexual abuse that was happening at the church?
I do not know. A sexual offense is always has to be proven.
Well, I'm specifically speaking about sexual abuse, as in, you guys were children. Were there adults that were sexually abusing any of the young girls there? Or even young boys?
Again, I'm going to say it is alleged that, yes, there were. But you do know that this is an offense that happens between two people, and one person has then got to report. But in most cases, when somebody reported, this was not spoken of. This was not heard of. But there are many people. I mean, today they are adults. Maybe they have moved on with their lives and they don't really want to go back into that. But there are people who came forward and said, so-and-so did this to me. And they would speak to a prefect, and the prefect would speak to the head girl. And the head girl would speak to the umfundisi. And then it would die, sadly. So, yes, but fortunately it didn't happen to me. But did it happen to other people? I want to believe it did, because they came forward and they said it happened.
So eventually at some point, you, much as you were back in your home village, you were able to find work and create a bit of a life for yourself.
I did not find work at the village. I left. I came to Durban, which is where I reside now. But I came here to find nanny work, because that's all I could do. I could look after a child. I could wash nappies. I could feed a baby. That's all I knew. But I realized that was not working. God was good to me. In the dark side of my story, when people say there's a silver lining on a cloud, I really, really do see that. Because during that time, when I came to be a nanny, I failed dismally at being a nanny. I met people. I found a job at one of the eateries on the beachfront in Durban. And I worked there, and I got myself through high school.
So you did finish your schooling?
Yes. So I'm really, really shortening a very lengthy story. But the long and short of it, there were people who lended, who were able to give me a hand when I really needed it. And I found a job. the most important thing, I think, as well, was that at 15, turning 16, I sounded like an adult. I sounded like I knew what I was about. Thank God for the education that they had afforded us. So I spoke good English. And so I think it made people think, okay, she has a brain. Because sometimes English and people think if you speak English, then you have a brain. I don't believe that, but it certainly got me some favors. And I was able to get through high school. And when I finished high school, I met a lady. She's since passed on, Mrs. Ngobo, at the youth center in Nanda. And she gave me a break. She found me a scholarship with a college in Mount Edgecombe. And I then was able to do a diploma through that college. So, yeah, I've had so much grace, and I've seen God over my life through people that came my way.
So this whole time, since the time your parents outed you, you were completely, or ousted you rather, you were completely alone trying to make it as a teenager, which you eventually did.
The first stranger was the lady who came from my homestead, who was in Durban, who needed a nanny. But she was a stranger to me because I had not lived with her. I had not known her from above. So she heard of my plight and somebody said, perhaps she might take shelter with you while she is offering the service that you need. And the second family was her family, her in-laws, because when I failed to do the nanny work, her in-laws were very happy to make me part of the family. They had 2 girls. So I was the third girl and the rest were boys. So in answering your question, as much as I was alone in the world, but there were strangers who became family along the way. I can count, because at some point I moved from that family and I lived with another family, the Matigizela family. They worked shifts. The wife was a nurse and the husband was a police. So I was the permanent person most of the time in the house when they changed shifts. And there was the Nobomvu family who have become my second family. There was the Mdleje family who gave me love, who took care of me at some point. There were a lot of people. I really can't mention all of them, but I know that God.
So in essence, you weren't alone at all. Much as you didn't have your biological family with you, you weren't alone. But at some point, there was a reason for you to go back to your father. What happened?
Often, I don't share this a lot with people because it really does sound taboo. I went to, after I finished my diploma, I got employed by a big company in entertainment. I worked in Pinetown for a year. Then after that, I moved to Johannesburg. Whilst I was in Johannesburg, I fellowshipped at a church in Spruitview. And the one time the minister called for people to serve in the ministry. And so I gave my hand up. And then I went back home. And I had this warning feeling that how can I serve when I know that my life is in a mess?
What do you mean your life was in a mess?
I was expelled from home. And I didn't have a relationship with my parents. So it felt wrong to be in a church and pretend like everything is going fine. So I was watching TV, literally watching TV, and it was almost, I don't remember, but it was almost as if my TV blacked out and somebody started talking to me. This person said, you need to go back home and make things right. He didn't say I must go and apologize. He said you must go back home, make things right with your parents, because they are going to need you more than you need them. I was like, I think I stood up because I wanted to respond, but there was nobody in this room. And that it ended there. And my TV continued whatever was playing on the TV screen at the time. I was so angry. I wanted this person to respond to me, to say, what is it that I am supposed to make right? What is it that I had done wrong? These people are supposed to be the ones saying they're sorry to me. For all I care, I could just disown them. I now have the ability, I can now disown them. I don't need them. But this person was very clear that they are going to need me more now than I need them. It must have been in 1997, 1998. No. It was 1999. And I resisted. I was like, no, I'm not doing it. So I didn't serve in the church. I did not want to do anything. But I had this heaviness. Eventually, I was like, okay, I'll do it. I'll go back and make things right. But I'm not going to apologize.
But how old were you at this point?
Probably 2021.
Okay.
2021 there. So I finally agreed to this internal turmoil I'm having. I'm going to go home. I'm going to go back, but I will not apologize. I will just ask to come back home. I'll just ask them to receive me back home. In 1999, my brother passes away. And so I go home to the funeral. I'm mistreated. I don't like the way I'm treated. But, well, we bury my brother, we move on. In 2001, finally, I agreed to going home. I went home, I spoke to my father. At this point, the church has had a split, a major split. So the branch in Tugela Ferry does no longer go to the branch in Kranskop. So my father says, you know where it all started. So I will accept you back home, provided you go and just make it right, fix it there. Oh my gosh, I wanted to die. I'm like, he's not interested in what I have to say. He has not even heard what I have to say, but he just says, you just need to go and fix it with them. Okay, I'm the person who is burdened, so I go and I make an appointment. I go, I arrive on the set day. I am met by the men who presided on my case. Even before I say, I greet them, but even before I say the reason for my coming. Oh, but I had said it when I was making the appointment. Hence, they are all here. So, and then one of the gentlemen says, my child, I'd like to apologize because we have, in fact, we knew maybe a month after you left that there was no relationship between the two of you. I didn't hear the rest of the things he had to say because he had something else to say. I started sobbing. I started just, the silent cry where you are suppressing the thing that says just scream.
Because they basically were validating what you were feeling all along, which was you were wronged.
So I say to him, are you now going to tell my parents exactly what you've just told me? He says, no. An emphatic no, like, we're not getting involved. So you're on your own. I don't know if I said thank you and I left or I just walked out. I can't remember what I actually did. But I know that meeting ended and I got onto the taxi. I went back home. When I arrived back home. My father says, "Oh, you're back. Uhambe kahle?" Yes, Baba, ngihambe kahle. So I'm thinking we're going to now sit down and then give him blow by blow what has happened. One, what has actually made me come? Because I thought it might be interesting for him to know what made me come. Two, when I went to the place, to the mission, what actually happened? So my dad is not interested. He's just happy to have me home. God, you must really be playing fools with me. I don't understand this. But if it is you, if the voice that has actually got me this far is you, you are really playing tricks on me. You are playing fools with me. And so at some point in our conversations with my dad, I then say to him, maybe it would be good that we have a ceremony that just brings the family together so that we can explain to them. You can explain to them that you've accepted me back home. Because at one point you didn't want me. Now I'm home. I think we're going to confuse the family. So let's maybe have a ceremony, and let's say it's a Thanksgiving ceremony. For me, it really was, because up until that point, my life had been good. As much as they were not there, let's leave the emotional side of things to it. Let's leave the incidences that happened. But on the overall, God had protected me from a whole lot of things. I was alive. My life was, I was making a life for myself. So we had a Thanksgiving ceremony in 2001. And my father, I think a month later, had a stroke. And now look at God playing tricks on me yet again. He said, okay, the voice I want to attribute to God, because that's who I believe. So when God says your parents are going to need you more than you need them, and then my father has a stroke as a breadwinner, then inside of me something says, okay, so this is what God meant when he said they're going to need you more than you need them.
So because we're running out of time, I just I want to get to the crux of what was it that took place after both your parents ended up passing away in the same year, and then it reached the point where the church was outed publicly, and you obviously have your own personal views about what you think the church is. And I mean, we're obviously happy to hear that you listened to that voice within, that you were able to have that moment with your parents. But let's fast forward to now. When you look in hindsight at the church, the mission, the school, what are your views on the school and the church?
The school part was a brilliant idea. The church was well-meaning, but like anything else that is started by people, there's always going to be an element of error. And what has since happened with the church is the church wanted to be God in people's lives. And it cannot be, when people, they themselves are looking for God and you want to be a demigod, it will always end bad. Because if you are not allowing people to have a personal relationship with God, and you become their God. So you become the standard of goodness. But you then must accept when you as a standard of goodness have erred or have done something wrong, you will never be able to own up to having done something wrong because you have become the standard of goodness. But when God himself still is the standard of goodness, you will then acknowledge the fact that you are a man. And you are a man who is going to fall short in some instances. And when you have done something wrong, you will then seek to make right and have restitution with the people.
Would you describe the church as a cult?
I do not know what a cult is, but I will tell you that there is definitely something wrong with the church.
So
it's not my place to.
You don't know what a cult is, as in the meaning of the word, or you don't know what a cult is in the context of comparing the church to a cult?
Thank you. Yes, you've contextualized it beautifully when you say in comparison to what the church is. But I can tell you what the gospel in its purest form is and what it is not. What the church is currently is not what gospel is. One, when you start to have rules, the don'ts, so many don'ts. The Holy Spirit is there to guide and give you the don'ts. Because the Holy Spirit is a person in themselves. So he is able to tell you what to do and what not to do. I remember at one point there are things that I didn't hear from the pulpit to say they were wrong in a Christian's life. And they were not wrong.
Did the church have a positive impact on your life or a negative impact on your life, considering the trajectory that your life took? Do you view it as something that was great or something that had a negative impact on your life?
It had a negative impact on my life.
So then maybe you can help us understand, why do you still paint it as this rosy picture if it had a negative impact on your life, where you were getting virginity tested, where you were completely isolated from the reality of what was happening in real life, where you were not allowed to talk to boys, where you were expelled? Why is your view on the church still rosy and like the church should still be there?
It's because I do not consider them a church. Like I said to you, there's a church and then there's a church. It's just that we're not using names. Them, they must go repent and they must find the real Jesus, and they must go get cleansed from every evil thing that they have done.
Do you mean the individuals as in the human beings? Is that what you mean?
Well, the human beings form this. There's a name of the church that we are referring to that I grew up in.
Which you've already mentioned.
By individuals.
Yes.
Which is made by individuals. The individuals who form that part, they must just go get cleansed, and they must cleanse the name that they've given to the church, and they must just repent.
So the institution you are fine with, but not the individuals running.
No, I'm not even fine with the institution.
Okay.
I'm not even fine with the institution. The institution has covered all its wrongs in the concept of who they have wanted to be all along. And because they wanted to be then they became a demigod, and they started doing wrong things, and they hid behind their intentions. So they are evil. They are evil to the core. They need to repent. But
so now that you are saying they are evil, I'm confused why you're still holding on to the rosy picture. And I'm not sure if the reason is, when you went to the school, it was such a beautiful contrast to life you were accustomed to at home. So maybe that is possibly the reason that it was beautiful, you experienced. The way you describe it, it sounds beautiful. But the things that happened to you are like what you just said, evil.
Again, maybe when I'm responding to your question, I'm responding to the question of the church outside of the dark church. Church is beautiful. Church outside of my dark church is beautiful.
And we already are clear. When I say church talking to you, I'm referring to your church that your family was a part of. So we're not speaking about church in general. Let's be clear on that. We're speaking about your church specifically. So when I ask that question, I'm speaking about that specific church that you refer to as dark church. I'm never referring to church as what the average South African would believe and know church to be.
So maybe if you are hearing me sounding like it was rosy, it's because the girl in me is referring to the first encounter with it. But later on, it's all darkness. It's all darkness to the core. So later on, if I then start referring to it as a church, maybe I'm speaking my hopes that because there are still people who are living there, I'm hoping they can find light. I'm hoping they can find a God who is love. I am hoping they can find restitution to make up with the people whose lives have been destroyed. Because I can tell you this much, that even though I am sound, I will never be able to live a full life because of the things that I have missed out on.
Can you share with us where you are today in your life?
This was all for me a spiritual journey, as much as it is a physical journey. In most instances, you do career, you move, but I think it is more of a spiritual journey. It's more of a mental journey where you start to see things in a different light, in a different perspective. And in all of this, I see God. I see how God can use a dark story for his glory. We don't have a lot of time to actually just unpack where we have finally found ourselves. I think my life is still unfolding, but I am a businesswoman. I am a mother. I have made mistakes, but I see the hand of God in everything that has happened, and I know that this is not the end of my life.
Have you healed from everything you experienced, and have you forgiven everybody involved?
No, I have not healed from everything. And that's an honest answer, because just because you have not come across something that triggers a certain thing, you will not know up until you get to a situation which triggers something. I find it very difficult to forgive. Just normally, I just find it difficult to forgive. But it doesn't mean that I'm holding people to it. It manifests in that I will say I have forgiven, but I will be on a watch to see if you are striking again. Because if you strike again, then I'm just going to remove myself completely from the situation.
So
you
forgive, but you don't forget.
Something like that. But that's actually not forgiving, because forgiving means you can still be in the same space and not be affected. So I'm easily affected. I am easily triggered. So if you go to therapy and they will help you find the things that trigger you, and then they'll help you to say, okay, this is where it all starts. This is how it unfolds. So you need to avoid this and need to avoid this. But we don't get taught this in church, as it were. So I think church would then be a place, because people go to church for spiritual healing. So it would be a place where we need to be taught how post a traumatic situation, how you really, really heal, because it has something to do with the actual work that you do on yourself, for yourself as well.
Celimpilo, thank you so much for coming to have this conversation with us. I know you've been through an extremely tough journey, and unfortunately we didn't have enough time to really get into the details of some of the experiences and the journey that you went through. I know many viewers will be, wondering about how you actually manage being a teenager, trying to find yourself in a world where your parents have abandoned you, and how you came out of it. But thank you so much for sharing your journey with us.
Thanks so much for having me.
What are your thoughts on today's story? Do communicate with us on the socials and let us know. I mean, this story was out publicly. This story was in the papers. It's something you can go out and read about. And it's interesting that the role of a church in a community, in society, is supposed to do X, but sometimes comes out doing Y. Thank you so much for coming through and watching. Have a good night. Next time on Unpacked.
After having my second baby, I decided that I wanted to just give myself with a mommy makeover. The doctor just did drawings on my chest, so I thought he knew what he was doing. After 3 months of my operation, I then realized that the breasts are not even. They're far apart, they're very painful. I said to him, you know what, I did not prepare for this. He said, oh well, such things happen.
Thank you so much for watching Unpacked with Relebogile Mabotja. Make sure you subscribe to my channel where you can get to watch more episodes. But more importantly, you can be part of our online community. Comment down below, share with us who you'd like to see on the show, what story you'd like us to discuss. We love engaging with you. Keep it coming and don't forget to subscribe.